So in the last video, we took everything apart once again, tried to determine what the issue is, and I chalked it up to that 6-gear planetary, is that the gears in the planets are wearing out, and I contribute that to the meshing of the Jeep and the Chevy gears. I should not have mixed those together. It's like taking a ring gear and a pinion from two separate differentials and hoping that they'll work. They'll work for a while, obviously, as we found out, and also chalking it up to not having enough fluid in the transfer case, causing that issue to heat up as I experienced on that trail when I could smell something like oil burning, and shortly after that is when all the issues happened. So that being said, we're replacing everything in it. Hopefully that'll solve the issues, because we took the bearings out. The bearings aren't Bernelled. They still are turned freely. The only issue is that the planetary, the teeth are becoming more like little sharp edges instead of staying somewhat blunt is what they should be. I did take this oil pump apart. It looked all right, but I got this one here, and we're going to roll with that. I also noticed that seal's actually pushed down further than that one. Maybe I should have butted it down. Maybe there's a leakage there. I didn't actually notice that before. I just kept it flush, but maybe it has to be completely seated. That being said, we're going to start cleaning up the mating surfaces, and I find one of the best ways to do that is with a die grinder and a wire brush. We'll clean that up. So anytime you use a wire brush, like I am on a die grinder, you want to make sure you have some eye protection. Because crap flies everywhere. That's gonna be enough B-roll for that. I'm gonna put a face shield on too. I just got a piece of wire in the side of my face there. Also, it will stick in your clothes too. So it's not that I got the cases cleaned up a bit. We're gonna look at this blind hole bearing right here, and you need a special tool to pull that out. And of course, a lot of people just aren't gonna go out and buy that tool. So there's many different ways, and you can take this out. I mean, if you guys have been a long-time viewer for a long time, the first time I did it, I used a die grinder and I cut it out, and that was pretty savage, to say the least, but it worked. Another trick that you could do is you could take like a torch and you could heat up the outside to help expand the metal a little bit, and then you could tap it with a hammer, and sometimes you get lucky and the expansion of the aluminum is greater than the steel, that sometimes it'll fall out. I'm not going to use a special tool. So this is your blind hole bearing puller kit right here. Take this part, insert it in there, then I hold this with a wrench, crank that in, spreads that open. Now you could use a slide hammer or a puller. I'm just going to use a puller once again, placement, put that in there, and then we're going to suck her right out. Yeah, you can always get around not having the right tool, but having the right tool for the job is definitely make it or break it for sure. She's a little crooked, but she's coming out. There we go. And out. Alright, so I got the new bearing. Gonna use a bearing driver to tap her down into place. Nice and flush. Nice and flush. I don't know if you guys can see, but it almost looks like that bearing might have been spinning in the housing. I don't like that. It's usually this one here that spins in the housing, but I know we're gonna try, but one thing you might have to do is take the ring from the old bearing, put on the new one. But I'm going to use a sleeve retainer to hopefully cure that issue. And we'll see what happens. Stuff is supposed to stop anything from moving. So we shall see. Gonna tap that into place with my bearing seal driver carefully. Bearing retainer, or the sleeve retainer says it's good for bearings, so we'll find out. They do say that if you ever use this stuff, if you need to remove it, you'll need to use some heat, which is understandable. Let's get that bearing tapped in there. Now, I mentioned this before. Anytime you want to put in a seal, you want to make sure that spring doesn't pop out, and you can help secure it in place by putting some grease behind the seal. It works perfect. And then over time, the oil just washes the grease away. Sometimes if you're lucky, you can get a big enough socket. Other times, you just gotta be creative and get that seal down flush. There we go. And before I can rebuild my new 6-gear planetary, there's one more blind hole bearing right in there. You gotta pull out. Hopefully this one will come out a little easier. I felt something pop. Come on. Is it coming? Yeah, it's coming. It's coming. Oh, I slipped off. We're halfway out. Let the new one in. The final touches. Pop that snap ring in. Yeah, we're good. All right, we're gonna try this again. You ever notice when you're in a rush and you're trying to get something done that everything seems to come along to screw you over? You never want to put your oil pump in dry. So I got a cap full of transmission fluid, and I'm just gonna pour it in there and then turn the pump over by hand. Just kind of get some oil in there. I don't want to give too much because all it's going to do is just come out the side anyways, right? I already feel there. I'm just kind of jumping forward here quite a bit because I'm trying to get this all done today. You always want to make sure the snap rings are seated in good. Trying to get this case on can always be a treat. See, I don't get my tube on there. I'm hoping I could fish this tube back in. Yeah. Come on, get the fuck in there. So hopefully I can be able to get in there so you can see is that little ridge off your oil pump pipe has to be in the pump. That way you know you're in there. If you're not, then you're no good. Yeah, it's not very nice out now. It's about minus 24 degrees, snowing and blowing. Just pure ugliness. Even though you guys don't realize that a week has gone by, it's the weekend again here, back out in the garage, and I assembled this. But I found an issue that is probably part of the problem. Now this is an old video clip from before I pulled the transfer case. Watch the front yoke float. And the problem is, I got it all together. Everything was looking fine and dandy, except I found some play in the output shaft. And normally that wouldn't really be an issue, except for the fact that I cannot sync up the yoke enough to take out that play. That is the biggest issue we're gonna deal with. Now, having some play is normal, except when you put your output yoke on and then snug it up, it's supposed to press against the bearing race and takes up all the slack to prevent it from slipping around. If you're gonna be able to see, but the shaft extends out past that. So I got my original Np231 shaft here, and then this one here. And if you see what I mean, I'll just put the bearing on there such you can see. So the bearing's supposed to bottom out those splines, so that when this is on, it bottoms out, it takes up the slack. 'Cause you're never gonna have a solid fit in here, because every case is going to be built different with tolerances. So you're going to have a little bit of play. Now, like I said, I got a little bit of gap, but I just can't make a shim yet. I got the borescope camera out. I need to shine my light inside the fill hole there with the camera, and then see if it's all the way forward, if the chain is going to be pretty straight, because if the chain's not going to be straight, that's going to cause some issues and have it wear out faster. I've kind of vectored it around in a few spots. I mean, that's obviously not a very good picture, but from the different angles that I put the probe in, it's definitely got to be sucked all the way out. There, I got to point it at the front gear, so I need to make some sort of shim. I'm hoping that you can see the relationship between the bearing and where the splines end are the shaft. I got to build a pretty big spacer for that. So this front output shaft came out of Np241 or Np242 or something. So the front output bearing and those ones there obviously must be a lot bigger. So I took a hole saw and cut out a disc the same shape as that. Now I need to take a smaller hole saw and hopefully cut out the middle, which will match this race. And hopefully that'll be enough shim. After a little bit of fabrication, got it done up. Slides down to the surface. So now I just got to put it on there. Slide it in place. Put the yoke back in. Tighten it down. See if it takes out the slack. Okay, I'm on round 2 now. I machined this little one. Put the yoke on. Didn't make a difference. I got this 1/4 inch one because, of course, trying to get it. There's a pretty big gap there, so I'm hoping the 1/4 inch will fill the gap. If it doesn't, I'll use the small one. But I think now, at this point in time, I have the situation rectified to take the slack out of that. I think we're good now. Take up all the slack. So there I have it. That slack is taken right out. All right, well, time to put some transmission oil back in it. 1.5 to 2 quarts, they say. I got everything back together. I'm going to keep that for a rainy day. You never know. I guess the only thing to do now is clean off this table, fold it up, crawl back underneath the Jeep, bolt that up, hook up the battery, don't connect the drive shafts, start it up, let it run, and see if it makes a difference. Well, I guess it's time to see if it is going to work or not. I'll open up the little man door so I don't carbon monoxide myself. Underneath everything. Get this light out of the way so it's not so harsh. Yeah. Everything is off the way. We'll start it up. Put it in 2-wheel drive. Well, it isn't 2-wheel drive, so it can circulate some oil. Oh, that LS sounds nice, eh? It hasn't been fired up in a while, but drop it in the gear. Drive shaft spinning. So since I can't, how should I put it? I don't want to shift it unless it's stopped. Put it into drive. All right, it's motherfucking beer time. Time to shut her down. I think I'm pretty satisfied with that. The new planetary, of course, will have to break in, so to speak, mesh itself to the other gears. It's a lot more quieter than what it was. Make sure there's no leaks coming out tomorrow, and put the belly pan back on, everything else, and still need to bleed the brakes, weld the tabs up top there. I think we'll be good. I think we'll be good to take this out for a rip and see what's gonna happen. I wish I would have discovered that the first time around, all that play in there, but I guess it's probably not something you go looking for. I just kind of noticed it myself when I had it apart and realized I have to shim it up so there's no play. It is what it is, I guess. Time will tell what's going to happen. Anyways, motherfucking beer time. If you have any questions or comments, post them below. See you guys on the next video when hopefully we'll actually take this out for a test spin and see what's going to happen.